It's my pleasure to welcome you here for a really special evening in conversation with Guy Kawasaki. And this is our way of saying thanks to you for giving back to you, essentially, for giving us so much and helping us to make the UNSW Founders Program in its first year so incredibly successful. But I do want to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet tonight, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And it's fitting that we're here this evening talking about ecosystems, because after a year of the Founders Program, as I said, we could not have run it so successfully without the skill, the expertise, the dedication, frankly, the incredible goodwill that you guys have shown us, and there's so many of you in the audience and contributed so much to our programs that we just want to say thank you for that. And as we take our place in the ecosystem, it's really quite heartening to know that we're all working for the same end, and that is to make Sydney the leading destination for startups around the world. Go Sydney! It's really a natural home for entrepreneurs, as we all know, and we're all participating so much in that ecosystem. And it's remarkable how much we've already achieved. This past year or two, Australia has moved up incredibly fast in terms of the venture capital available for startup funds, for the startup ecosystem, to the extent that in the last year we've risen for what was originally around 18th in the OECD nations in terms of venture capital available per GDP to 3rd in the world, tied with Canada. It's an amazing amount of money through funds such as the Airtree $200 million fund, the Second Blackbird Fund, Maiden Sequence Ventures, and with the launch of IP Group, first of all, that total was $1.3 billion in new funding in 2017. And then with the launch of IP Group this year, another over $1 billion theoretically in funding to fund early stage research and startups in Australia. So no longer can we say the funding isn't there. We are one of the best destinations for startups around the world. Cicada Innovations, backed by UTS, by University of Sydney, by ANU, and by us at UNSW, was named the best incubator in the entire world. It's an outstanding achievement. The studio in the startup space was one of the best media accelerators I've ever come across, and launching another area of expertise in Australia that none of us probably knew was so deep. They've launched this year, and they've launched their first Pitch to Investors event. We've placed many interns in their companies. It's been really exciting. HiveMind has created a space for the innovators and the incubators and the accelerators to get together and to share best practice and to collaborate more effectively. NAB Ventures has raised another $50 million to fund fintech startups. Main Sequence has launched their Venture on Campus program. We were the first university to adopt it. UTS has quickly followed. And what can we say about the incredible events that have been hosted this year? Over 1,000 people on Cockatoo Island for Blackbird Sunrise event. Tech 23 was just outstanding this year. And last week, StartCon with 4,000 people. It's just amazing. For our part at UNSW, it's been a year since we launched the UNSW Founders Program with the first cohort of the 10X Accelerator. And in that time, our team has supported 240 startup teams out of UNSW. It's just amazing. We want those venture funds to have a great pipeline. We've introduced almost 10,000 staff, student, and alumni to entrepreneurship through the MCIC Foundations program, through all sorts of ways, hackathons, challenges, design sprints, product thinking, design thinking, and so on. We've increased the number of young women participating in entrepreneurship with initiatives such as our New Wave program, so that now 38% of those 240 startups have female co-founders. It's just been outstanding. And our startups themselves have been welcomed, embraced, and incredibly supported by this ecosystem. UniSeed has invested their first student startup in one of our 10X startups. 2 of our startups have graduated and gone straight into Y Combinator in Silicon Valley. Tilliter, out of the last Founder 10X, has graduated into Plug and Play in Europe, one of the European accelerators there, and has been nominated for the Australian Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. 6 finalists and the 3 winners of Tech Sydney's student startup competition all were from UNSW founders. Motorica, another 10X company, has won the Hitachi Social Innovation Award. This past week at StartCon, Get to Sleep Easy, another UNSW Founders startup, won Best Sydney Startup Award, and Share with Oscar, another startup of ours, won the Best Mobile App. And we're very proud to have launched Australia's first university-based funding to invest in our student startups to make all of these programs sustainable indefinitely. My team has expanded. We've been able to attract such outstanding leaders as Jennifer Zanich, who's now running our ecosystems and partnerships, and Luke Deacon, who ran the Austrade landing pads globally, is now running our founders programs. None of this could have happened without your support. You are as much a part of our success as we are, and tonight is about saying thank you and to say we hope that this will be first of many, many years of collaborating together. I want to say a special thanks to our Deputy Vice Chancellor of Enterprise, Professor Brian Boyle. Usually he's by our side for every major event like this, but today, unfortunately, he couldn't be with us. And I just wanted to say he's been the best kind of boss. He's let us run as fast as we can and supported myself and my whole team with outstanding support the whole way through of our growth. And here now to reflect on his own experience at the pointy end of the world's most successful and the most enduring startups ecosystem of all, which is Silicon Valley, is Guy Kawasaki. And he's in conversation with our own Fee Chout. Fee Chout is my third senior manager. She's in charge of MCIC Foundations and the whole network of makerspaces. Again, the best prototyping student makerspace network in all of Australia. And actually one of the best in the world, we found out by joining the MIT consortium. She spent her career working locally and internationally, designing and producing incredibly immersive experiences for students and staff of all parts of the university to experience entrepreneurship through hackathons, through all sorts of programs, creativity and innovation, and we're delighted to have her here today. She has a very special relationship with Guy. It's lasted for several years now. They're great friends, and he's been quite a mentor to her, and she's generously offered up Guy to us to say thank you to today. Guy's bio is this long, and I told Fee I couldn't read the whole thing, so apologies, Guy. But I'm just going to mention a few things you may or may not know. He is the chief evangelist of Canva, one of Australia's most outstanding startups, as we all know. He's a brand ambassador for Mercedes-Benz, and I know one person in the audience knows that because her father works for Mercedes-Benz, just learned. He's an executive fellow of the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley, which is an outstanding school. He was the chief evangelist, of course, as you all know, at Apple, and he's a trustee of the Wikimedia Foundation. He's the author of several books, one of them, The Art of the Start 2.0, which Fee's going to talk about, The Art of Social Media, Enchantment, and 9 other books as well. He's been a leading voice, as we all know, in entrepreneurship and evangelism for years, beginning with Apple in 1983. And he has an incredibly unique perspective and insight in what it takes to start a company. So we're absolutely delighted to have you here. Please join us in welcoming Fee in conversation with Guy Kawasaki.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth. And thank you for being here, Guy.
Thank you.
So The Art of the Start has had a huge impact on my career and my personal growth. So it's a real honour to host this in conversation with you tonight. So the questions tonight have been shaped from input from the audience. So I thank everyone who has submitted me a question. But you'll have a chance at the end to ask some questions. But to kick off this evening, I'd like the audience to get to know you a little bit better by circling back to your diamond days.
Yeah.
So, from diamonds to Apple, how did you go from a jewellery salesman to the Apple evangelist?
First of all, thank you very much for your hospitality. I have been to Sydney several times, and I truly do love Sydney. It's like San Francisco without the hills and with a better president of the country. But anyway, so I went to Stanford and I graduated with a degree in psychology. And after that, basically to make my father and mother happy, I went to law school. And I hated law school, so I left law school after 2 weeks, which shows you that quitting is not a slippery slope. And so I went into the MBA program at UCLA, and the MBA program was a 4-day-a-week program. So I had Fridays free. And I wasn't exactly, swimming in cash. So I took a part-time job at a jewelry manufacturer, literally counting diamonds. And after my degree was over, when all my friends went to Accenture and Wells Fargo and McKinsey and all those kinds of things, I went to an unheard of small jewelry manufacturer in downtown LA, where I was, in sales and marketing. And fast forward a few years, and my friend, a classmate at Stanford, had taken a job. He left HP and he went to Apple, the Macintosh division. And he called me to see if I wanted to interview at Apple. And I went, and I didn't get the first job, but I went again, and I got the second job. Basically, you could say that I owe my transition from jewelry to computers to nepotism, because it was purely my classmates, roommates, hiring of me that made it. I mean, on paper, I had never taken a computer class. I had never worked really in the computer business. It was pure and simple nepotism. And the wisdom there is that, it's not how you get the job, it's what you do once you get the job. Believe me, because I had no qualifications for that job.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that. That's a great lesson to us in the power of your network. So you have also been one of the only people to work for Steve Jobs twice and survive. I've heard you describe it as one of the best experiences in your life.
Yeah.
So a lot of us here tonight, we've followed the rise of Apple. We've seen the movies, the documentaries, and we've read probably lots of articles.
Yeah.
Can you share with us, your inside perspective on what it was really like working at Apple?
So everything you've heard, read, seen, it's all true. It's all true, but from the outside looking in, I think you might get too much of a negative perspective. So the acid test would be, to ask any of us who worked in the Macintosh division, would you do it all over again? And the answer is absolutely yes. Now, he was a very difficult person to work for, very demanding. I wouldn't say, he was kind of amoral, not immoral, amoral. He just had a different operating system. And he would drive in the carpool lane by himself. He would park in the handicap spaces. It would not be unusual for him to just point out somebody and say, who hired him? I want to know who hired him and why he is still working for Apple. And he would do it in a group like this. And so one lesson that I learned was fear is a very good HR technique. Because I lived in deathly fear that someday he would point me out and say, who hired Guy and why is he still there? So, contrary to the theory of HR that you're supposed to meet with the person and develop mutually beneficial goals, focusing on the positive, the kumbaya BS you learn about HR, he ruled by fear, and it worked. I'm telling you, it worked. It worked very well. Now, to truly understand him, though, I would say he drove us to have the best work of our lives, and that's why we put up with it. I mean, obviously there was compensation and all that kind of stuff, but one of the things about working for Steve Jobs is you knew that you worked for someone who was smart enough to appreciate great work. And that's not true at a lot of companies. So that was one thing. And I love 2x2 matrices, so I will give it to you as a 2x2 matrix. So if you imagine a 2x2 matrix where the vertical axis is, sort of competent and incompetent, and the horizontal axis is asshole, not asshole. So in a perfect world, you'd be in the box where it's not an asshole, but competent. That's the best case. The second best case is competent asshole. Really, the most common location of people is incompetent asshole. So, just wrap your mind around that. You want to be in the competent, not asshole corner, but if you have to be in a corner where you're an asshole, at least you should be competent, is what I'm trying to say. Now, you could get into the whole philosophical argument about what comes first. I mean, because you're an asshole, it enabled you to achieve, or because you achieved, you became an asshole. I mean, it's like, which came first? I have not yet solved that existential question. But, I have never even met him, but if you look at the reports of how Elon Musk operates, I mean, that's not a guy that, you'd want him to marry your daughter. But I mean, he's the closest thing we have to Steve Jobs today, by far. I mean, there's nobody else. So.
Great. Well, thank you for that insight. And it's a really great segue into my next question. So for you, what was the most important lesson that you learnt from Steve Jobs?
Keep your head down. Probably that customers cannot really explain what they want in terms of innovation. That if we had gone to the Apple II owners, they would have said better, faster, cheaper Apple II. None of them would have said, give us a computer that's incompatible with Apple II, different chip, different operating system. None of our Apple II software will work. None of our peripherals will work. Nothing will work. It just, it's completely blank sheet. Make us buy everything all over again. Nobody said do that. But that's what we did. And honestly, if we had not done that, if we had just made a better, faster, cheaper Apple II, Apple would have died because, the 65 CO2, was at its limit as a chip. I mean, there were like a lot of factors. So you had to do that. And, that's an important lesson. So you can go to your existing customer and ask them, how do we improve what we have? But you can't go to an existing customer and say, well, how would you revolutionize our products? Because all they can say is better, faster, cheaper.
Okay, great. So from the early days of Apple, how did, you leverage the ecosystem support? And what pillars, did really Apple use in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think Apple's continued success, first of all, if you don't believe in God, it's time to rethink your belief in God, because Apple's continued success is proof there is a God. I would say Apple, what kept Apple alive at times when it couldn't do some stuff and shouldn't do some stuff and didn't want to do some stuff, were the Apple user groups. So these were people who are essentially fans of Apple, who are willing to provide support and information and warmth for customers when Apple couldn't, shouldn't, didn't provide support. So they sustained Apple. And there are companies who have those kinds of evangelists, user groups, believers. So that was one. And then the third-party developer community that created software and hardware that Apple couldn't, shouldn't, didn't create. So the third-party developer community rounded out the Apple product offering. Essentially, those two things with Apple created an ecosphere that has caused the $1 trillion company. I mean, Apple could not have done it without the user groups that kept them alive in the difficult times of the 80s and 90s. And certainly, if all the software you got for a Macintosh or an iOS device came from Apple, listen, we'd all be on Android and Windows today, trust me.
So to throw that to here in Sydney.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what's unique about our system, our ecosystem, and how can we work together to leverage our unique features? And what can we learn from the Valley?
Yeah, I think the lesson to learn from the Valley is that it's all about education, really. If you have a good educational system producing good students, good graduates, they will come up with ideas, and everything else flows from that. So I think many places assume that, well, the gating item is venture capital. That's not been my experience. The gating item is not venture capital, it's human capital. And if you get human capital, everything else will flow. Because if there's one thing you can depend on with venture capitalists, it's greed. And so if you have human capital, trust me, the greed will follow, the money will flow. So I would focus on the educational institutions. And I think that the key to Silicon Valley's success is certainly not Sand Hill. That's just bottom scum-sucking people there. The key to Silicon Valley's success is Stanford University. Stanford University.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that because, I'm here with UNSW Sydney, the Founders Program. So, that's a really great tip for us and for everyone who's here tonight and, what we're trying to build and create.
I know who butters the bread.
So I just want
Or as we say in America, I'm not pissing in your pocket.
So I want to dig just a little bit deeper into the Silicon Valley mentality. And, I've heard you talk about it, I've heard others talk about it, that is it true that in the Valley people wonder why you don't start a company?
That is true, honestly, that if you see someone, I'm just thinking who I'm going to piss off here. Let's say you have a buddy, and that buddy has worked for HP for 25 years. Maybe you're not crass enough to say it, but you would be wondering, why didn't he or she ever go to a startup and start a company? And that is true. There is that attitude. I can't tell you it's fair. I can't tell you it's necessarily right. But there is that attitude that there's an expectation that, you try that. I don't know, what can I say? I mean, also the flip side of that, which is helpful, is that, if you fail, it's not that big a deal. Now, some people have taken that to too far an extreme where they're saying it's okay to fail. It's not okay to fail. Because when you fail, you throw away money, you harm people's careers and psyches and lifestyles and life quality and all that kind of stuff. So it's not so cavalier as, yeah, it's okay to fail. Take our $5 million, run with it. If you fail, it's all right. We'll get more money from a pension fund. It's not true. It's not okay to fail. But if you do fail, at least you should be learning. So, because I can tell you something that in Silicon Valley, it doesn't matter how many times you fail, you just have to succeed once. We have very short-term memories. And the way it works in Silicon Valley is you throw a lot of stuff up against the wall, and a very small number stick. And then you go up to the wall and you paint your bullseye around that. And you say, I hit the bullseye. Look at that. I knew that team was world class. I knew there was a great market. I knew there was a great business model. I hit the bullseye. Well, yeah, you painted the bullseye afterwards. I mean, if you look at the Silicon Valley successes, two guys want to start a company for 140-character text message, right? Yeah, I mean, sure, we need another text message. We need more IRC. We want people to say, the line at Starbucks is long. I mean, let's fund Twitter. Or you say, well, I need infinite bandwidth and infinite server space so that people can upload illegal video. And what's going to make us tip is when people start dropping Mentos into Diet Coke. So let's rush out there and fund YouTube. Yeah, baby. And, so my business is going to be selling used HP printers across the United States. And the first thing you'd ask is, well, if you're buying the used HP printer, how do you know it'll work? And if you're selling the HP printer, how do you know the Visa will clear? Besides that, there are no technical issues why eBay shouldn't succeed. And so you can just go down the list of, I could almost make the case, you just fund the most dumbass idea you hear. And sometimes it works. Because, I mean, I can honestly tell you, I mean, Google, so it was the 7th search engine. You know, there was Inc. to me, and there was, what Digital Research had one. I mean, there were 5 or 6, I swear. And like, you know, why did Google succeed? Why was it the 6th one? And we're not talking like bleeding edge, early pioneer of search. You know, it's the 6th or 7th search engine. So it's a strange place. I mean, I have to tell you, it's a strange place.
So we should be careful when we're hearing, you know, people and founders that are telling us that they're failing forward and they're failing fast. We should really look at more of it in the learning lenses.
Those people have been watching too many YouTube videos. Don't believe, I'm an author, okay, and I'm telling you this, don't believe everything you read. Okay, we're going to go down a rat hole right now, but not that we haven't been in other rat holes, but we're going in a different rat hole now. So, you know, the problem with business writers, of which I am as guilty as anybody, is that none of us write as if it's science, right? So in science, there's a hypothesis and there's a controlled experiment. So you have to take 2 identical companies and keep all the variables the same except for one thing. And then you can definitively say it's the team or the market or it's the technology. But, you know, quite frankly, if you try to concoct a scientific experiment to prove anything in entrepreneurship, by the time you've proven anything, it'll be too late. So it's probably impossible and too late. So basically, you take your best shot. And so that's why much of business writing about entrepreneurship is kind of case by case, right? So you look at Apple and you say, well, so Apple proves that if you have someone who truly loves design and engineering, you can succeed. That's the lesson. But you know, that's the lesson from one story. And so, you know, there's like things where do you pivot right away? You know, you start it, you have this great founding team, they have a dumbass idea, so you pivot and you achieve success. Or the flip side of that is you have this team and everybody said it wouldn't work, it's gonna die, you're on your last paycheck, but you believed, and then you somehow flip. So which do you believe? You should gut it out or you should pivot, because those 2 things are exact opposites. It depends which book you read, right? if one author says, you know, fail fast, you say, okay, so we'll try a bunch of stuff and we'll throw stuff against the wall. If the other author says, well, you know, according to my analysis, it's the people who truly believed and worked on it for 10 years, and when everybody said it couldn't be done and it shouldn't be done and it isn't necessary, they still believed and they made it happen. That's a completely different theory. I don't know which one to believe. I mean, basically, in a sense, the story of painting the bullseye after the fact is you write the book after the fact. So if you want to say, well, you should pivot, then you find pivoting examples, and that's what you should do. And if you want to prove that you should gut it out, you find examples of companies who gutted it out. And I'm sure I'm confusing you more than anything else, but what I'm basically trying to tell you is that if you think that we have some kind of magic insight and pixie dust and unicorns in Silicon Valley, I hate to burst your bubble, but we just know how to declare victory better than most people. It's not that we have more victories than other people. We can just declare them faster, and you know, we know how to fake it till we make it. Burst your bubble, huh?
Well, that's a fantastic insight, and you know, one for us to, you know, really consider. But for the founders here tonight, and for the Australian startups, you know, who are seeking to, you know, break into the valley, you know, what's a key insight?
Well,
for
first
them?
of all, I don't agree with the framing of that question. Your goal is not to break into the valley, right? I mean, are you saying they need to break into the valley to get Valley venture capital because Valley venture capital is more value added than any other venture capital? I hate to burst your bubble. I mean, all cash is green. So it's not about breaking into the valley, it's about building a viable company. So I wouldn't say that Canva broke into the valley. I would say Canva built a very successful business with local venture capital.
Okay.
I used to be in the venture capital business. I don't want to lose all my friends. I just don't. Who are the venture capitalists in this? I need to know who I'm going to antagonize. Yeah. They put their pants on one leg at a time too, or their wetsuits. What else?
So why we're I'm just going to dig in one little bit more in venture capital. So, but I'm going to flip it to women in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So, pretty much, a very small portion, around 4% of funding is allocated to women.
Yeah.
And then, we go even lower when we look at, 1% of corporate procurement goes to women-led business.
Yeah.
So in the words of Vicky Saunders, who's a Canadian entrepreneur, the CEO of She.io, we're not a niche market. What do you think we can do to tackle this, to change the culture of how we perceive and invest in women-led startups?
The fundamental cause of this is that men are stupid. Let's just say that. Let's just be upfront. Men are fundamentally stupid. And so it is an old boys network. They feel most comfortable funding old boys. You could make the case that, back in the second grade, teachers were pushing girls towards, soft sciences, not STEM and all that. But, okay, maybe the pipeline is different. But, to me, building a successful company is so hard, right? And the gating item for most successful companies is great people. So you should do everything you can to get great people. So why you would say, okay, so I have to get great people, but let's wipe out one gender from that pool. So you just cut your pool in half. And then you say, well, and we don't want women who stopped to raise children and now returning to the workforce at 40 or 45. So then you cut another piece of that pool off. And then if you're really dumb shit American, you say, okay, and we don't want any Mexicans because they're rapists, and Muslims because they're terrorists, and gays and lesbians because they don't agree with our evangelical Christian perspective. So pretty soon there's only tall, old, white men to fund. And that is a conundrum to me. I don't understand it, because at the end of the day, you want a successful company. And now this is one thing, circling back a little, this is one thing that in the mid-'80s, Steve Jobs had this wired. Okay, so Steve Jobs, if you looked at the direct reports he had in the Macintosh division, half of them were women. I can honestly tell you that Steve Jobs did not care about your gender, your race, your religion, your sexual orientation. He did not care at all. You were either great or shit. Those were the only two variables that Steve's mind could comprehend. So he was way before his time in that sense. He and Susan Barnes, the CFO of Apple, right before Macintosh was finalized, they went to Japan and met with Sony to buy the disk drives for the Macintosh. And the Sony executives told Steve they would not negotiate with a woman, i.e. Susan Barnes. And Steve told Sony, if you won't negotiate with her, you won't have our business. So imagine telling Sony that in 1983. This is way before his time. And so that's another very valuable lesson of Steve Jobs. Yeah.
So really, together, what we all have to do is radically redesign an ecosystem that supports finances and celebrates diversity in entrepreneurship.
But you know what? I have to say that may be too big a challenge to embrace. I just think you should start from the position of let's just build the best damn companies we can. And if you want to build the best damn companies we can, it's hard to say let's build the best damn companies we can led by men who are white Christians. I mean, that makes no sense to me at all. I don't understand why you would do that. And so I don't think any venture capitalist wakes up in the morning, maybe with one rare exception, I don't think any venture capitalist in the morning wakes up and says, I gotta fund some women today. I gotta make the world a better place for minorities. They just want to make money. I understand that, but if you can convince them that the way to make money is to be gender, religion, and racial blind, your pool is better, you probably will make more money. That's the way to do it. And in a sense, people like Melanie, the CEO of Canva, I think she's going to go a long way because Canva is very successful. It's going to be very successful. And when they see that a 30-year-old woman from Western Australia, from Perth, of all places, started this great company that became a unicorn, maybe some venture capitalists will say, maybe we should meet with women because they create unicorns. I could go on like this for hours about this. I just don't understand this. I really, truly don't. It is just stupid, and I hate stupidity. So, you want to know how I really feel?
No, thank you for that honesty. So in, so many books and articles, thought leaders, are talking about the formula of a successful startup.
Yeah.
As having 3 key elements.
Oh, God.
Proven team, proven technology, proven market.
Total bullshit.
What's your take?
All total bullshit. Because at the time that a venture capitalist has to make a decision, none of those things are known. At the time he had to squeeze the trigger on Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak or Larry or Sergey, you didn't know they were world-class CEOs, world-class CXOs. There were 2 guys in the garage, 2 gals in the garage, a guy and a gal in the garage. When BlackBerry invested in Melanie, she wasn't a world-class, former CTO of HP or Dell or Apple or Cisco. She was in the business of making high school, annuals. And so this concept that, we're looking for a proven team is total bullshit. The concept that you're looking for a proven market, also total bullshit, because there was no personal computer business when they started Apple, right? You telling me that when Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, there was a proven market for people to post pictures of themselves drunk? I mean, give me a break. And you don't know if Mark Zuckerberg can really develop the engineering. You don't know if Steve Wozniak can really make an Apple One. So basically, none of those things. And so I guess the question is, what do you do? And you get lucky. I mean, maybe you can rebut me, but if you can tell me when a team is good, I would like to find out how. Because I think at a seed stage, maybe at the mezzanine level, you can kind of know that the team is functioning. But at seed stage, 2 guys in the garage, 2 gals in the garage, a guy and a gal in a garage or a dorm room, you're telling me you can know you have a world-class team? Well, then I like to ask most VCs, so you make 20 bets a year, you know that 19 are going to go south. So did you know in those 19 times there was a world-class team? Or were you just, faking it? Because obviously if you knew, you wouldn't be 1 out of 20. I mean, in what professional endeavor can you be 1 out of 20 and be successful? Not shooting free throws, not professional surfing, you catch 1 out of 20. I mean, there's nothing. So I think the richest vein for successful tech startups, the best algorithm I could come up with is two guys in a garage, two gals in a garage, a guy and a gal in a garage have created the product that they want to use. And then you just hope that they're not the only two people in the world. Woz and Steve made a computer they wanted to use. I think Larry and Sergey made a search engine they wanted to use. David Philo and Jerry Yang made a website called Yahoo that they wanted to use. I think that Cliff and Melanie created a website called Canva that they wanted to use. And at least you know there's a market for the two people. And then you just hope that there's more. I think that's the richest vein. I really do. It's certainly not, read highfalutin consulting reports and say, okay, so, the highfalutin consulting report says IoT is big, so we're going to go into IoT. Well, by the time you read it in a highfalutin consulting report, it is too late. So, I don't know what else to mean.
Well, here we see the rise of the user entrepreneur, solving your own problems, designing products that you want.
I really, maybe even better than that is solving the problem of your spouse. I would say wife. That's what I really want to say, but I have to be more politically correct. But, I dislike the concept of, people see this mega trend and all that. Like, okay, now, having said all that, after you succeed, go ahead, rewrite the bullshit history, okay? You could say, yeah, we saw a worldwide market where social media was taking off and we realized that the world was entirely text-based, so we saw this need for people to create graphics for social media to better communicate and better, tell their story, so we created Canva. Okay, you can tell that story. If you're the victor, you can reinvent history. I understand that, all right? But let's face it, when you create Canva, you say, wow, these students cannot use Photoshop and Illustrator. They're screwed. Let's do something better. That's what the genesis was. But, once Canva is listed and all that, you'll hear me say this total bullshit story. Yeah, we realized that there was a need for graphics. There was communication was increasing. I'll spin this great story and I'll bring tears to your eyes. But really,
storytelling's important.
Two guys wanted to upload a bunch of videos, so they created YouTube. It's not that they foresaw the world market for the sharing of video as a communication, platform. Total bullshit.
So in your talk in The Art of Innovation, you mentioned how great innovation and disruption occurs when entrepreneurs and organisations, try to jump the curve. Can you explain this for us a bit more?
I think that great innovation occurs when you jump curves. That is, the example I always use is ice. So there was ice harvesting, then there was ice factory, then there was refrigerator. So, it's not like the people who made it big in the ice factory business decided, well, let's have a bigger sleigh and a sharper saw and more horses. That's how we'll revolutionize ice harvesting. They went from ice harvesting to ice factory. And then the people who created refrigerator companies, it's not like they said, well, let's have more ice factories with freeze water bigger and faster and bigger and better ice trucks. They went and created personal ice factories called refrigerators. And that's where I think the great innovation occurs. It's not on the same curve. It's the next curve. And having said that, it is very hard to decide what the next curve is and then create the thing. But circling back to what I said before, I think the odds of you creating something that's on the next curve because you created something that you yourself want to use is much higher than with any other method. I really do. I'm not saying it's 90%, but it's higher than listening to experts.
So, circling back to entrepreneurs, and one of the most essential and endearing characteristics of entrepreneurs is their unquenchable optimism. Enthusiasm enables entrepreneurs to believe, in the face of all odds, that they can change the world. This is such a critical asset for entrepreneurs, but it's also potentially a flaw. how can entrepreneurs best leverage this superpower and not overplay it?
First of all, let's just be honest, okay? Even the most brash and bold entrepreneur is faking it. I mean, you'd have to be a true psychopath to truly believe you're bullshit when you say that. Every entrepreneur is faking it and doesn't. Every entrepreneur is insecure. You know, the concept that an entrepreneur is this swashbuckling, bold person who loves to take risks, that's not somebody you want to hook up. You want to find somebody who's trying to minimize risks. You know, I don't want Melanie to say, oh, let's take a risk. Let's just go, whatever, roll the dice. You want someone who says, okay, so we need to think carefully, should we go after this market for presentations with PowerPoint, with Canva to go after PowerPoint? Should we really offer printing? People are designing stuff with Canva. Should we give them the next step about printing? And you want a CEO who's thinking very carefully, is it worth it? Can we compete with FedEx Office? Can we compete with Vistaprint? I mean, is there enough of a business? I can't tell you that bluster wins. At some point, I think it's usually overdone. I'd rather have someone who underpromises and overdelivers than someone who says, I especially love these kind of pitches where two guys in the garage, two gals in the garage, a guy and a gal in the garage, they come up and they say, we're going to make this router. We're going to make this router that's going to revolutionize Wi-Fi. And it's because we are smarter than Cisco. And we know how to cut costs. So we can make a router cheaper and faster and more secure than Cisco. This is the kind of guy you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
And you want to say to that person, so how many routers have you built in your life? Oh, 0. Well, how do you know you can make it cheaper? Well, because my sister's uncle's brother has a relative in China, and he said he can build routers cheaper, so we're going to fly to China and source our routers in China. So you want to say that, okay, so you're telling me Cisco makes 20 million routers a year. You're making 0 a year. You're going to make it cheaper than Cisco. Is that what you're trying to tell me? And they are. And I mean, so if you're going to lie, at least lie with some basis to believe your lie. Or tell different lies. But that's just, how are you going to... I hear that kind of pitch every day. We're going to make a better phone than Apple because we're smarter than Apple. So yeah, you're smarter than Apple. Apple makes 20, actually the best one is, we're going to make a better search engine than Google. And you want to say to them, so Google has 75,000 PhDs, and it's you two guys in the garage, and you're going to make a better search engine. Like, why should I believe that? I mean, on the other hand, it's possible. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is possible, but it's hard to believe the story that, we're smarter than the 75,000 PhDs at Google. We're going to build a better search engine. That's a little stretch.
Thank you. So, just with a bit of the lens on the founders, so one of my favourite quotes of yours is
You're
that
be careful.
Great companies start because founders want to change the world, not make a fast buck.
Yeah.
So how can entrepreneurs find the right balance between changing the world and making money?
Well, first of all, I don't think the two are necessarily mutually exclusive. Indeed, I would make the case that if you change the world, you will probably make money. Having said that, I don't believe the converse is true, which is if you make money, you've changed the world. I mean, basically, you could look at every investment banker and say, okay, that proves that you can make money and not make the world a better place. So I think the way it works is, if you make the world a better place, you will probably get rewarded and make money. So the key is to make the world a better place. I'm trying to find an example where people clearly made the world a better place and failed and didn't make money. That's a hard, you know? I mean, seriously, think about that. I have to think about that. I don't think there's too many examples of that.
Excellent. Well, we'll come back to that. So one thing that I've also really enjoyed, hearing you talk about is pitching to investors.
Yeah.
And can you share with us your insights into why asking for money is like online dating?
Oh, okay. So I believe there's two kinds of extremes in online dating. At one extreme, there's eHarmony. So at eHarmony, you fill out 29 fields of psychographic information because your goal is to find your soulmate. This is the man or woman that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. You're going to be, holding hands, drinking white wine, holding your sandals, walking on Balmoral Beach, completing each other's sentences. Your house is perfectly clean. Your children have, straight A's, straight path to the uni. In fact, you're trying to decide, well, should they go to Dartmouth, Yale, Stanford, University of New South Wales, University of Western Australia? Everybody wants them. So that's the purpose of eHarmony. The opposite extreme of eHarmony is Tinder. And at Tinder, you look at a picture, you say, interesting, not interesting, interesting, not interesting. And I think the metaphor that I would recommend to you is that venture capital is Tinder. It is not eHarmony. So, you think you're going to find this investor, or you're going to be completing each other's sentences, or you're going to find this psychographic match, and, all this kind of stuff, and they're going to support you because they said they invest in people. What they forgot to say is they invest in people until you miss your forecast. So I think you should wrap your mind around that it's a Tinder world in venture capital. It is not an eHarmony world. You don't want them to be your friends. You just want them to write, the check and basically not do you harm. So that's one analogy I would use. Another analogy is an airplane analogy. This is at the start of the pitch. So because most entrepreneurs have watched videos or attended conferences, and for every panel on venture capital, the moderator asks, how do you decide what to invest in? And every venture capitalist, guess what they say? We invest in the team. Because either they're stupid or they're intellectually dishonest because they know that they're investing in unproven teams with unproven markets, with unproven technology. I just described Apple, Google, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. Unproven team, unproven market, unproven technology. But, they're afraid that they're limited partners in the audience. And so, if you're like the pension fund of Australia, and you're sitting there and the one venture capitalist says, yeah, basically we invest in unproven teams and unproven markets with unproven businesses, probably the pension manager is not going to say, man, can I give you $100 million into your fund? So they have to tell this lie, oh yeah, we invest in people. So every entrepreneur thinks that venture capitalists invest in people. And so what happens is, I think, we're going to come back to the airplane analogy. So what happens is in this pitch, you got it in your brain that venture capitalists invest in people. So you start your pitch with, let me introduce my team because I want to show you that we have a world-class team. Well, I hate to break it to you, but by definition, if you're pitching for seed capital, you do not have a world-class team. Because if you had a world-class team, you would not have to be doing this pitch. So by definition, you're an unknown quantity. But you're going to fabricate this story. So you're going to say, I went to the University of New South Wales and I majored in engineering. And then, I took summer classes in Microsoft.net and I interned at Goldman Sachs. And then I had an internship at Google. And so I'm a world-class entrepreneur now. And you think, sure, you can believe that. But you're not a world-class team. So anyway, and they do this for each founder. So now you're like 15 minutes into the presentation. And the investors are still wondering, what the hell does this team do? Is it hardware? Is it software? Is it social media? Is it IoT? We don't know, but we know that their relatives, their ancestors came over to America on the Mayflower. We know they landed in Plymouth. We know they started the first, ice harvesting business in Massachusetts. And subsequently, they started a refrigerator company, and now they endowed a chair at Yale. And we know their entire family history, but we don't know. Is it hardware or software? And so this is where the airplane analogy comes in. And the airplane analogy is that two kinds of airplanes. One is a 777, 787, 747. 747s are decommissioned, but 747. And those are the kind of planes that take 2 miles of runway to get into the air. And every time they take off, you know, a little angel sings because, hallelujah, you've defied gravity. How do you get, 500,000 pounds into the air or whatever those things weigh? So that's one kind of airplane. At the other extreme, there's an F-18 on an aircraft carrier. And the aircraft carrier, the deck is, 200 meters long, and you have 1.5 seconds to either reach velocity or you fall in the ocean and die. Okay? So guess what kind of airplane you want to be in a venture capital pitch? The F-18. But most people are the 777, and they're trying to tell their entire story so that 15 minutes later you finally know, oh, they make an online graphics service. And so I guess the sweet spot, going back to a 2x2 matrix, is you want to be the F-18 pilot on Tinder. Not the 777 pilot on eHarmony. That's all you need to know. Okay?
Perfect. Well, thank you for those hot tips for a perfect pitch.
Well, wait, I'm going to give you more pitch advice, okay? So, tell a story about the genesis of your company. Cliff and I, University of Western Australia in Perth, teaching undergraduate students Illustrator and Photoshop. Too expensive, too hard to use. People couldn't afford the hardware that was required to really run Photoshop. And we thought, there must be a better way. Me and my co-founder, Steve, the only place we could use a computer was going to Stanford, working for HP, working for NASA. And we thought, there's got to be a better way. Computers should be smaller and cheaper and easier to use. So we started Apple. Or, my girlfriend was a toy collector, selling toys online. She collected Pez dispensers. There was no way for her to sell her Pez dispensers. So I started eBay. By the way, eBay tells that story, total bullshit story, okay? But it's a great story. So what I'm trying to tell you is, tell that kind of story. Give people an emotional hook, as opposed to the typical pitch, which is 300 million Americans. 1 in 4 owns a dog. 75 million dogs. Each dog eats 2 cans of dog food per day. Total addressable market, 150 million cans of dog food per day. And dogs eat every day of the year. We're not talking enterprise, Salesforce, B2B. This is B2C, or more accurately, B2D. Dogs eat every day of the year, 150 million cans of dog food per day. With my rock star co-founder programmer, how hard could it be to get a mere 1%? That is 1.5 million cans of dog food per day times 365. We're talking 600 million cans of dog food per year. Worst case, conservatively speaking, before we go global. Listen, I have tinnitus in this ear and I've lost hearing in this ear. It's because of all this shit that I've heard for 30 years in Silicon Valley. And so, you again, Tinder, F-18, tell a story, right? My buddy and I were, my co-founder and I were teaching college students. They had such a hard time with Photoshop and Illustrator. We thought there must be a better way. Something that's online, doesn't require heavy computing, lots of training and lots of expense. So we created Canva. Let me explain what Canva is. Canva is an online graphics design service. Think of it as Photoshop for the rest of us. In the time that you boot Photoshop, we can make a graphic in Canva. That's the pitch. That is freaking F-18 Tinder. Okay? That's how you should embrace the pitch.
Excellent.
And wait, one more tip, okay? Because you're going to get your money's worth out of this. In a perfect world, you did what I just did. Tinder F18. Rather than using the 300 million Americans wanting for owns a dog, each dog eats 2 cans of dog food per day, what you want to do is catalyze fantasy. And the way you catalyze a fantasy is you do a demo. I believe a demo is worth 1,000 slides. So you do a demo, and you want to basically make heads explode. You want to suck the eyeballs out of the people in the room. And so you do a demo, and Canva, it's very easy. So you show, these are the 700 different design types: Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, 16:9 presentations, book cover, album covers, posters, flyers. These are, for each of these design types, we have 200 templates. So you want to create one? I'll create one right now. Pick it, change the text, upload your photo, boom, done. 30 seconds, you've created this beautiful flyer with Canva, right? And so what you're trying to do is, you're not trying to go down this path of, well, there are 9 billion people on the internet. Let's suppose that we get 1% of them, which I think is 90 million. 90 million people. We get 90 million people. They each make 1 graphic per day. That's 90 million graphics per day. But that's conservative. They must make 2 graphics a day. That's 180 million graphics a day. And that's 1% penetration. Don't do that. Because the guy or the gal at 9 o'clock did that, 10 o'clock did that, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Everybody's did a big market. How hard could it be to get 1%? It's 1% of a big number is still a big number, okay? So instead, you do this demo, and in this perfect world, you would do a demo, and the venture capitalist, the investor, the prospective partner, prospective customer, prospective employee would catalyze fantasy in his or her brain by himself or herself. They would see the demo, and they would say, so in 30 seconds, that person created this totally great flyer. My spouse could use that. My kids could use that. Every website could use that. Every business could use that. Everybody posting on Instagram needs that. Everybody making a Facebook cover photo could do that. Everybody tweeting could use that. And so you're sitting there convincing yourself, OMG, lots of people need Canva. We should invest in Canva. So it's like pornography a little bit. You're trying to catalyze a fantasy here instead of doing this top-down, 1% of a large number is a large number. Catalyze a fantasy by getting to the demo. That's all I can tell you about pitching. So.
Perfect. Well, I'm actually going to literally throw
What time is it?
to the last question.
Have we been going an hour already?
We have.
Seriously? Time flies in Sydney.
Exactly.
Ah.
Throw it to you.
What?
Yeah,
what?
we just want to throw one last, and I mean literally throw, one last question to someone in the audience.
No, why are we doing one last question? I mean, it's not even dark yet.
So we can continue the conversation outside and enjoy the view.
No, you know what? I'll stay here all night long. I don't care. I'm in no particular rush because.
I'll give the mic to whomever has a question. You've got a mic.
Alex
Okay.
is going to actually throw it.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, hello. Hi, Guy. Thanks for coming here tonight. So my question is, you're involved in a lot of startups. How do you identify what companies are going to be successful?
Well, first of all, I'm not involved in a lot of startups. Really, I'm only involved in 2. Canva and another one called Privy. So Privy is an online, it's an anti-social media app, basically. So think of it as kind of Instagram meets Slack with privacy. It's Privy. It's on Android and iOS. Please check it out. And so I don't do this. I'm 64. I'm at the end of my career. I'm not looking for new challenges. As you can tell by the way that I talk, I'm not exactly afraid of burning bridges at this point. 'Cause I mean, what are you going to do? Not offer me a job? And so I'm really not looking for investors. Honestly, I just want to surf. I just love surfing, and I just want to surf every day and just watch my Canva stock go up. That's what I want. Seriously, that's what I want to do. So anyway, but you ask a serious question, and I subscribe, and just to show you I'm internally, intellectually consistent. I love Privy. I'll explain how I use Privy shortly. And I love Canva, 2 products I use. And so I invest and support stuff that I use. If you came and pitched me on enterprise software, I have no freaking idea how enterprise software works. Biotech, I have no idea. IoT, I have no idea. Blockchain, I don't even know what blockchain. I can't figure out blockchain to save my life. So I wouldn't even meet with you about those things. So it has to be something that I truly would use or truly do use. And so I'll tell you the use case for Privy. So Privy is double opt-in, all right? So you create an account, and then you create albums. In the album, I have to invite you, and you have to agree. So it's double opt-in. So this means that unless I'm an idiot and I invite a Russian troll, there are no trolls in my album, right? And there is no algorithm. Everybody sees everything in Privy, in that album. So I have a Kawasaki family album. There are 6 members, 4 kids, my wife and I. Every post, everybody sees. No advertising. And so we can do things in that circumstance we cannot do in others. So, mostly funny stuff, right? So me flopping off a surfboard, dog pooping on my carpet, stuff that's not exactly Instagram, but for the 5 of us, 6 of us, it's extremely funny. I have a group of another album of people that I surf with in Santa Cruz. And so we post funny stuff about surfing and food, but nothing else. And so the use case is to have one for your family, one for your Santa Cruz surf group, one for your Sydney surf group, one for your, your Australian football colleagues, whatever. And these are things that, again, double opt-in, no trolls, no spam, no nothing, no advertising. So it's those 2 things, Canva and Privy, pass the test of I actually use it. Now, it could be that, me and the founder are the only 2 people in the world who use it. But at least there's 2 people. So that's really my test. What else?
I'm going to throw over to... We've got more in the audience. Where's the mic?
Hello.
Yeah.
Do you think we're about to see widespread quantum computers around the world? And do you think that's what sort of changes? You think
Another thing I don't know anything about.
All right, next question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Conceptually, if you're telling me the computers are going to get really fast, well, yeah. Duh. I don't know if it's quantum computing, but I don't know. Hard to, I can't say, I think they're going to slow down from here on in.
Do you think that there is the right time in someone's life to create a startup? And is there a difference between passion and experience? So if you're very young, should you just go ahead and do it? Or should you go get some industry experience and then go after it?
I don't think, both of those questions, I don't think there is any specific right answer. That, again, this comes down to the lack of scientific basis of business writing. So you can say, okay, so Steve Jobs never finished college. Steve Wozniak never finished college. I think Bill Gates dropped out, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out. So, okay, so like, that doesn't mean you should tell all your kids, drop out of college, you'll be the next Steve Jobs. Well, it takes more than that. So, and I think if you really looked at the statistics, the age of a startup tech entrepreneur is much higher than you would think. It's not just, dropouts from MIT but I will tell you though, honestly, one of the hindrances to entrepreneurship is wisdom. And I'll tell you why. It's because as you get older, you understand how little you really know. And so, like, I know how little I know. I know how much luck takes. Luck is a factor. And I also know how hard it is to do stuff. And so when you know how hard it is to do stuff and how big a role luck plays, and that's like not conducive to entrepreneurship. So when you're young and you don't know what you don't know, that's very empowering. And so I think there's a theory why, two guys in a garage would go and decide to take on, any company. But when you're 40, 50, 60 and you have kids and you're trying to like have work-life balance, okay? So when you're young, you have no work-life balance. That's one of the beauties of being young. You don't need to have work-life balance. Like, don't even, if a young candidate, and I can say this, I'm not in the US, so if a young candidate says, I'm looking for work-life balance, don't hire that person. You want people to give their friggin' lives to the company. But, when you're 40 and 50 and you have kids and spouses and all that, and you're looking for work-life balance, that's hard. I wish I could tell you there's a way you could thread the needle and have work-life balance and be an entrepreneur. It's kind of not true.
I wanted to ask you, as we're in like a visual world and everything's graphic and
we gave you the mic so you would speak into the mic, not hold it on your lap. Yeah.
In a visual world where everyone's looking at one another and analyzing each other's, lifestyles and Tinder. Objects and Tinder and all that sort of thing, how would you summarize this evening in one hashtag? So no emoji, one hashtag.
How would I summarize this evening?
This evening in one hashtag.
What you guys heard from me?
But your experience here in this room and in Sydney. So
it's my experience of what happened or your experience of what you saw?
It's your hashtag, so it's how you would describe it, whether that's with a symbol or a word or a sentence.
I'll give you both answers. So from my perspective, what did I do tonight? The hashtag would be out of control. From your perspective, it would be truth at last. How's that?
Thank you so much.
I'm dead serious. Are there any more questions? Because I'm like,
yes,
you haven't even scratched what I could do. Do you need to go?
Hello. I wanted to ask you about the successful jerk paradox.
The what?
The successful jerk paradox. Is it jerks, do they become successful?
Right.
Or is it survivorship bias? Or is that actually part of the aspect of being successful?
This is a very good question. Which came first? So if you're a jerk, you're more likely to succeed, or because you succeed, you can be a jerk? I hope it's because you succeed, you can become a jerk. But having said that, I hope that's true, because to say the opposite would indicate that you need to be a jerk to succeed. And I don't believe that's true. I don't think you have to be a jerk to succeed. So I would rather it be that if you succeed, you can be a jerk, with the caveat that you can be a jerk, but you don't have to be a jerk. So why not just succeed and be a nice person? But this is one of the dangers of, again, business writing. So, you can make the case, it's very difficult, especially with Silicon Valley types, to separate correlation from causation, right? So you say, all right, so this guy one of the most successful entrepreneurs ever, he drove in the carpool lane by himself. He parked in the handicap slot. He humiliated people in public. He, regularly just shredded people. And I'm going to be like that because that's what it takes. Well, for all you know, you could be a nice person and have succeeded as much, right? So that's, and a lot of this kind of stuff happens when people always come to Silicon Valley because they think there's some kind of magic there that they're gonna go on this tour of Silicon Valley and they're gonna have the scales removed from their eyes. So this is also dangerous because every time I meet these groups, I tell them, listen, don't confuse correlation and causation, because you're gonna go on this tour of Facebook and Google, and you're gonna see the people playing sand volleyball. And there's going to be a Japanese restaurant next to a Thai place, next to a barbecue place, and there's going to be free dental, and there's going to be a t-shirt workshop, there's going to be woodworking, there's going to be massages at your desk, there's going to be Tibetan monks making, kale juice for you, and there's going to be ping pong tables, and there's going to be vending machines where you put your badge in and you can get any computer you want. You're going to see all that, and you're going to think, that's what made Google and Facebook and Apple successful. So you're going to go back to your company and you're going to start giving people massages, and you're going to giving them free food, and there's going to be volleyball, and you're going to have these off-sites, and you're going to have yoga at lunch, and free dentists, and the mechanic is going to come and change your oil in the garage and all that. And what you'll basically have is a shit company with really happy employees. So it's very, the reason why all that stuff occurs is because Silicon Valley is very competitive. You have to do that to attract talent. But that's not what caused Google to be successful. Engineering caused Google to be successful. And being in the right place at the right time. Any other questions?
Yeah, over here.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for making me the second oldest person in the room. And related to that, I have a question about the importance of the company you keep in your success. A lot of people in Australia have this isolation complex, like we're too far away from everything. It's why so many people want to break into Silicon Valley, because that's where all the cool people are, that's where all the successful, that's where the high-powered people are.
God help you, yeah.
Exactly. And the question is, in order to be successful, do you have to be around the younger people who are doing things, or the smarter people, or the people who are already successful?
Yeah.
Or can you go against the tide? Can you be your own success and define success even though no one else around you is playing that game?
So you're saying, should you intentionally hang around dumb, lazy people? I mean, I can't make that case.
But you don't always pick the company you have, your family, your where you happen to live, that sort of thing.
I would say that if you were to rank the factors that's going to determine your success, I wouldn't put those in the top 10. I think it's much more about the company you keep in terms of who you recruited, as opposed to who you go to the bar with. I mean, we have Canva, Atlassian, and Deputy, right? Or that's the new hot company around here too. So, I mean, obviously they're freaking 6,000 miles away. 15-hour flight. I also, I'm going to go down a real big rat hole right now. I have to tell you that I think that Donald Trump is handing Canada and Australia and China the world's greatest opportunity. Because if I know your prime minister changes every 6 months, but if and that's a long one. But I mean, if you sat down and you said, now how can we encourage more people to immigrate to our country and to stay in our country and create great things here, you could not have a better president of the United States than Donald Trump. It's as if you and Trudeau and Xiaoping, or however you pronounce his name, planned it. I mean, if you were a smart person and you were thinking, like, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley and I'm going to apply to Stanford and I'm going to go and start the next company, but then you read, like, okay, so they're building walls and they're tear gassing people and they're, Russian bots are fixing the election. Like, why would you go to America today? I mean, this is not good marketing. It's just insanity. So we're handing you, you should love Americans right now. I mean, we could not be helping you more than by doing what we're doing. So this is, in a sense, answering your question. I think the key is not so much this who you hang around with, but you should not have an inferiority complex that because we live in Australia or Canada, that we're not Silicon Valley. Because there are at least 3 data points, Atlassian, Deputy, and Canva, that disprove that theory. And so that's number one. And number two, the world is flat. And I can tell you, there are millions of people who use Canva, literally millions of people. I bet hardly any of them knows that it's from Sydney, Australia. Because quite frankly, people don't care. I don't think people wake up in the morning saying, I want to build graphics with an American company. It's not like I want a motorcycle made in America or a surfboard, although a surfboard made in Byron Bay is not a bad idea, but a surfboard made, it's not, all my friends use Canva. I'll go to canva.com and sign up. You don't go to Whois and find out, oh, Canva is Australian based. I don't want to make graphics in Australia. It's too isolated. What? I mean, what kind of idiot are you? So I think the key here, another recommendation for you is you should always hire people better than yourself. So if you're the CEO and you have an engineering background, it should be a source of pride to you that your VP of engineering is better at engineering than you. And your VP of finance is better at finance, and your VP of marketing and VP of, like, everybody should be better than you. You should look around your executive staff and say with pride, I might be the dumbest person in this room. I mean, that is, oh my God, that is like the perfect case, right? Because think of the opposite. If you went to your executive staff meeting and you looked around the room and you said, I'm smarter than everybody in this room. That is pathetic. I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have caused the bozo explosion because B players hire C players, and C players hire D players, and D players hire E players, and pretty soon you have Z players. And so I think it's very important that, it should be a source of great pride that you hired people better than yourself, because that's what makes companies great. And if you look around the room and you're better than everybody, then your standards are too low. What else?
Guy, we're going to wrap it up so that you can mob Guy on the terrace.
I don't want any of you going on Twitter and say, well, he just rushed out of there. He didn't even
not at all. Stay in the terrace and have a drink and let people mob you. I think they want to.
Okay, so if you do that, understand something. If you talk to me on this side of me, I cannot hear you. Okay, so don't start talking to me on this side and go on Twitter and say, he just ignored me. I'm not ignoring you. I literally cannot hear you. Okay, so you got to talk to me on this side.
Good tip.
And if you can't get to me, My email is guykawasaki@gmail. So it's my name at Gmail. It's not that hard to do. I got in early on Gmail. So it's not, Guy Kawasaki 503. It's Guy Kawasaki at Gmail. Right? All right, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Guy. Thank you, Kate. It was outstanding.